So I never do any intros in this podcast. I'll do the intro like after. I'll just
Okay.
like record it like later on and just also I like to do it like that so that like I guess in the conversation I kind of know the person even more, so I can cook up the coolest intro
Yeah.
ever. Yeah.
A few of the podcasts that I listen to, they'll sort of find like the highlight or the most exciting moment,
Yeah.
sort of like a teaser or
Yes,
something
yeah.
from the interview,
Yeah.
and then they pull it to the front to
Yes.
like a hook almost, you know.
Yeah.
so that,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
stuff like that. Just sometimes I make a joke with a guest, and then like I remember like one time there was like a guest. She's like really good at marketing.
Okay.
And she's like in the marketing space. She's like the queen, and so she likes Avengers movies.
Oh.
So for her intro, this whole Superman thing, it's
Okay.
like it was so hilarious.
Nice.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what we'll do for you, Adam. shall get
I'll
creative.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, since you run Bananga Brewery, maybe we shall think of something very clever. In this episode of Madhouse, we speak to Adam, the co-founder of Bananga Brewery, about how they got started, the brewery, and all the cool things they've been up to as they start a local brewery in Kampala. Enjoy the episode. Yeah. So Adam, just introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Gabriel. My
Yeah.
name's Adam. I'm one of the founders and directors of Bananga Brewing Company.
Okay.
We make high-quality beer, and we're selling it all over Uganda now. Yeah.
Nice. So I'm very curious, how did this all begin? Like beer for you. Like, let me just be honest. Like the first time I saw your brand,
Mhm.
I was like, this reminds me of like one of those. I don't drink beer, but like I am very fascinated with like small breweries because
Mhm.
of the intimacy and the clever things they can do around their brewery. And when I
Mhm.
saw your stuff, like that went into. I think even that's the first time I met
Yeah,
because I was so
yeah.
curious that I showed up. I bought the shirt.
Mhm.
I mean, I was just like, let's just like support these guys because I kind of like this idea a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious how this whole dream of beer and
Mhm.
like where like I'm very first. I think I'm curious about like where your love for beer started as
Mhm.
Adam, and then how this whole idea of starting a brewery began. Yeah, for you
Yeah,
guys.
definitely. So I've loved beer for a long time,
Yeah.
since I was a teen, I guess.
Yeah.
And shortly after coming to Uganda,
Yeah.
I started brewing beer as a hobby.
Okay.
So my business partner Paul and I brewed, for probably beginning 7 years ago in
Oh, wow.
Uganda
Oh,
as
wow.
a little sort of hobby brew club. We'd
Okay.
do it in someone's kitchen
Nice.
or in a side room in their house.
Yeah.
And that was largely of necessity, I guess, at first.
Okay.
So where I'm from, Canada,
Yeah.
we have hundreds of different beers that are produced in Canada,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
many different styles.
Okay.
So some that would be lagers,
Okay.
similar to the beer you could find in Uganda,
Okay.
but lots of different beer with really sort of explosive flavor as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So now at Benange, we've tried to sort of bring in some of these styles of beer that
Yeah.
are from other parts of the world,
Okay.
that are new flavors
Yeah.
and new styles to Uganda.
I might start drinking beer. The way you talk about beers, like I'm just like, explosive flavors. So it's like I should find these beers.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that's how it began for you. With
Yeah,
beer.
so it's my sort of journey into brewing started, in somebody's kitchen, my business partner Paul's kitchen.
Yeah.
And we continued for a number of years,
Okay.
just brewing purely for personal consumption as
Okay.
a hobby.
Okay.
We'd get together every 2 weeks,
Okay.
brew up a batch
Okay.
of 20 liters or so,
Yeah.
and then every 2 weeks do a new batch. And it started to sort of transform into a business.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember Yasigi Beer Garden,
No.
but they were another craft brewery before us.
Okay.
That has since gone out of business.
Okay.
But we had been customers at this place. It was just behind Mediterranean, off Acacia Avenue.
Okay.
And they were starting to have some sort of consistency issues, and we tried to partner with them
Yeah.
and work with their brewer. But they weren't weren't so receptive for that,
Okay.
and then they closed completely.
Okay.
And they got in touch about sort of selling their equipment to us.
Okay.
And we agreed to buy it,
Okay.
and then we couldn't agree on a price, or that negotiation didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But we had become really sort of excited and fixated on
Okay.
the idea at that point.
Okay. Cool. So what were you doing in Uganda before? I'm just curious.
So I
Ian
came here. My background is in engineering.
Oh, okay.
I came here to do research in the solar industry.
Oh, nice.
And worked at Makerere.
Okay.
With this little research group called Creek.
Okay.
I was there for a year, and
Yeah.
then with a small solar company that spun out of that research group.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you were, and then beer was like the favor. And is that the same thing for Paul? Paul was also just
So Paul, he's also been here quite a long time. He originally came to work in the development industry.
Okay.
He's from Iceland, so he started, I think, at the Icelandic Development Agency, and then has done various stuff in agriculture and digital.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's nice. So so I'm very curious about like the first stages, like how did this idea begin? Because like the thinking of breweries, like when you say brewery, I'm thinking like Bell,
Yeah,
big
something
breweries like Nell.
big.
Yeah, but I'm very curious like how you and Paul just sat down and said let's start, and like what that whole process was like for you guys, and like I'm also curious about like state of mind, like how you were sort of dealing, because I guess there were people saying you want to do what, how, why.
Yeah, it was sort of a big jump in the early days. Something that really helped us become fixated on it and fixated on finding a way to make it a reality. We did sort of a market test at Kepasa Bar in Kisimenti. So still when we were brewing with our sort of simple home brewing equipment, we decided let's do 5 batches in a row. So like 10 weeks of work, and try and bottle as many beers as we can. And then we'll partner with the owner of Kepasa, this nice guy, and work with or get him to sell them from his bar. And we can use that as a gauge of like, is there enough customer demand? Are people willing to pay more money for a beer when they're used to these sort of cheaper options? And we put a ton of work in. I think we had 350 bottles.
Wow.
All sort of
homemade,
hand-filled, hand-capped, putting the labels on myself. And gave them to Luke to sell. And within 24 hours, all 350 were sold.
Wow.
So, that was sort of the first sign of like, oh, wow, people are really desperate
for like a new beer.
For a new beer and for something different.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm very curious. What is the step after that? Like, what did you guys decide to do? Because now I guess it's now.
So we had this market test. We had some recipes and some small home brewing equipment. But we needed a lot of money to turn it into a business. I guess.
Very true. Yes.
So we were able to use this test and use sort of the brand that we had created. To find investors.
And that's Banange, right?
Yeah, exactly. So even at that Kepasa stage, when we were putting on labels by hand, we had already called it Banange at that point.
Okay, cool.
And we sort of publicized the results of that test, I guess. And we were lucky that many people had caught wind of like, oh, did you hear about those guys making beer? Like, I heard they were going to start a business. So we were lucky enough to find beer lovers across Kampala that sort of grouped together and chipped in some money.
That's nice.
So we had more than 20 investors in our first investment round.
Nice.
And they all chipped in a bit, and then it was enough for us to order equipment from China.
Nice.
And we've
that's amazing.
taken it
Let's
from
see. Like I think so. I was right the whole time when I saw the website about like how like the brand. My brain was always like, I feel like Banange is such a community-based like brewery, because like by the time that your first investment is based around the community,
beer lovers, it just feels like, oh wow, that's very like interesting things happening. I'm very curious about like, because this is a silent podcast, I mean, I'm very curious about like failure and successes. Like as you guys, I'm very curious about like a story that you willing to share that where you and Paul sort of failed, and like what you learned from that failure as you're trying to start the brewery, or even the early stages of the brewery, that you go like, oh, we'll never do that again, and we've learned
so
that.
many failures.
Yeah, but let's just one, because
just
I just want the podcast, like for those who want to start something in the beverage food industry space,
definitely.
maybe to like go like, oh, okay, so these guys have gone through something like, or something.
The one that is coming to mind right now has to do with like electrical equipment, I guess. So because we were on a budget, our equipment all got imported from China. And the electricity supply in Uganda is not super steady and not super constant. So to anyone starting any manufacturing business, I can't encourage you enough. Really invest in sort of high quality protection for your equipment. Really good surge protectors, good stabilizers, phase controllers, everything you can think of, or get a good electrician and spend the money. Especially in the first 6 months. We spent so much money just replacing things because power would surge and something would break. One time, Umeme was working outside, and they disconnected the power, and when they reconnected it, they had swapped 2 wires. So every motor in the brewery began running in reverse. So for some motors, it didn't cause damage, but for some, you can imagine running in reverse can cause serious damage. And, there's this very special, piece of equipment that can protect from that, but unless you've seen it go wrong like that before, you would never think it's something that you need to.
Wow, that must have been like a painful
for,
experience, you guys. It's been like running around in circles.
A headache, and it's expensive. But
I can imagine. Like for me, I'm just like, and I'm just saying, you guys, you can keep your brewery. I've gone home. Who wants scrap metal? And success. I'm very curious about the successes as you grow in your brewery, and how you have adapted those successes to even make it more interesting as a brewery.
I think one of the successes that I'm most proud of and excited of is when we opened 2.5 years ago. Sort of the vast majority of our clients were expats or foreigners, people who were already used to the flavor profile of our beers and the styles. But every month it seems like the ratio of expat or foreigner customer to Ugandan customer sort of swings in the direction of more Ugandans.
That's
so
nice.
it's been really encouraging to see more people get used to more different types of beer and get excited about what's out there. And to see that grow has been
that's awesome. I'm also curious about running a brewery from I don't know how to say it, but from a psychological, like, what is usually you and Paul's state of mind every day you're going to work? Like, because it feels like such a, I mean, it feels like such, it's like you guys are juggling quite a lot every day. And because this is the Madhouse Podcast, and it's really about process and creativity and how to make things happen, I'm very curious how you, as Adam, are just sort of, and Paul, are just figuring out from a state of mind thing, like a mental space, like how you sort of dealing with it and how you sort of accomplishing the tasks and the goals that you're really trying to figure out and do as things go.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a challenge for sure, I think.
I can imagine.
And I think probably every business owner can relate in some ways to running a business. You feel sometimes like a firefighter. You can come with a particular plan of what you want to accomplish that day. But inevitably, things start going wrong or your attention gets pulled somewhere else. Paul and I sort of split the business where he handles a little bit more of the production related stuff. and I handle a bit more of the finance and sales side of things.
Okay.
But there's still quite a bit of crossover, so we both can sort of cover for each other when we're not around.
Yeah.
But yeah, any given day, our schedule is up in the air and changes last minute. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess your team dynamic is really helping you both sort of run the business and like connect with people.
Yeah, definitely. And we've sort of built a small team at Benange, so it's
easy
when
now?
we first started, it was Paul and myself.
Yeah.
And one other person.
Yeah.
And we've now grown to a team of 10 or 12.
Okay, that's nice.
So most of our employees have sort of fixed responsibilities.
Okay, cool.
And
So
Paul and I are sort of the floaters that are jumping around from
yeah.
every department. Yeah.
Okay, that's really nice. So as we end the podcast, I just have like one crazy question I usually ask every guest. One life lesson from the brewery business. It would be fun if it's like a beer related like thing or thing that happens like in the brewery world, but a thing that you've learned in the brewery space that you think someone can apply either in their life or in their like creative process or in whatever thing they're trying to make happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll have to go with sort of the importance of patience. So making a good beer is similar to, baking a fancy cake.
Takes time.
It takes time. Yeah. It takes sort of attention to detail.
Yeah.
And it's important not to rush things, even if you have time pressure or whatever else. So I can think of a handful of experiences where I've tried to do something quickly at the brewery, and it's resulted in a small disaster. So one that's funny. We add hops. Afterwards, and it's important to release all the CO2 from a tank before you add the hops. Yeah. Otherwise, it can cause the hops to explode everywhere. Yeah. And I had drained most of the CO2, but I really wanted to go home. I was in a rush. Yeah. And I opened the valve before the tank had fully depressurized. Yeah. And boom! Wow. The whole brewery, probably the size of this entire room, this little hop dust was sprayed everywhere. Wow. So, it's these moments where you feel that pressure to rush because your mind is somewhere else or you're stressed for time or something, if you're doing something, I would say almost anything in manufacturing, really take your time, attention to detail, be careful. It's better to be a few minutes late than to have to redo something. So,
Yeah, wow. So thank you so much, Adam, for your time. It's been awesome having you, the podcast. I think let me end this recording.
Yeah, thanks, Gabriel. Good to be here.
Yeah.